Hey, I'm Morgan, and this is the PS We Expire podcast.
So I am in the throes of what they call Maycember. Are you familiar?
Tell me.
Okay.
Tell me what this is.
As a parent, I have a first grader and a fourth grader, and Maycember is the term people are using to describe the chaos of like late April to, honestly, I mean, they call it May, but I feel like it's anywhere in the spring to early summer where it's the nightmare of what are we going to do for the summer? How are we going to handle childcare? There are 8,000 different emails to check. All of the apps, all of this get so much to do. The Spirit Week email on Sunday night, like a logistical nightmare. Plus the heartstrings that get pulled because you want your kids to participate in those things. Like, I want my kid to have fun for Spirit Week. I want the ice cream social. I want them to have a good summer. I want all of these things, and it's a nightmare, and it's expensive. And what are going to be the impacts on my career long term? And it's just such a whirlwind. And I think about how my relationship dynamic impacts how I'm able to navigate that and how it impacts my kids. But also structurally, it doesn't seem to matter how well I balance it with my partner. I know it does actually, but it feels really intense because we are up against the rising cost of living. I mean, like this looming sense that someone could be laid off. And then what are you going to do about health insurance? So it's just like not just a logistical nightmare, but I think this Maycember moment faced with how heavy it can be just to try to stay afloat.
It's like the shadow side of back to school.
Woof. Yes, absolutely.
So how are you thinking about that then? If you're, I mean, maybe this is a good way to even start talking about things like the mental load is, as you're thinking about what this summer is going to look like, there's the logistical side of it where you're making concrete plans, but also there's the side of it where it's like, how are you taking care of yourself in the midst of an overwhelming, like, piling on?
Yeah, it's a lot. Maybe this is very unique to me, but I'll tell you, one of the first things I think that goes when everything else is just a lot is personal health and wellness, and not like taking a bath and getting some quiet time or like yoga or, a face mask, like not that, literally going to the doctor or dealing with actual health things. And one of the best things I've done for myself recently was get my blood work done. And I realized that I have been deeply deficient in my vitamin D for like a year. And I'm like, oh, no wonder I feel like my hair is falling out and I'm so tired. For all of the reasons that I just listed, but also because a lot of times, and this is like data backed, women and mothers tend to put off their health appointments and their general mental and physical health. We have higher cortisol levels than our husbands in general. And that's, in the cis-het framework, based off of where our studies are. But a lot of times in general, women have higher cortisol, and that impacts your health. So I know for me, literally taking a moment to plan, what am I going to eat? How am I going to keep my routine? What am I going to do about my vitamin levels? It's been way more important than I've been giving it credit for.
It's like it's the self-care that people don't consider to be self-care, but might be one of the most important aspects of that. That's one of the things that I talk about with like grief education, is how you're a person who's moving around in a body while you're experiencing grief, and like you have to take care of the hardware in order to then also address some of the emotional upheaval that happens with grief and loss. Because it's like, if you know how grief impacts your sleep, how it impacts your ability to like stay on task, like all of these things that are really, really important if we're going to really take care of ourselves. And you're right, it has to go beyond the surface of like a face mask. It has to go deeper than just skin level, for sure.
Yeah, it really is so multi-layered.
Yeah. So, okay, so taking care of yourself in a way that's not superficial, that also does require some logistical planning, usually some expense, you know, because you got copays and stuff. But knowing that taking care of the physical body is an important aspect of being able to show up for your family and for yourself in your life the way that you want to. How does the emotional labor fit into this, and this phrase that you coined several years ago that is now just like part of the zeitgeist when it comes to emotional labor? And tell me all about that.
Okay. This is a really interesting piece of it. So I've been online talking about what the term you're talking about is weaponized incompetence. So back in late 2020, I saw this video of, there was this woman talking about, oh my gosh, it just seems like sometimes like husbands are doing a bad job on purpose. Like, I'm so tired of these men doing a shitty job on purpose. Just help your wives. And I watched this video on TikTok, you know, we're all like isolated, and, you know, I'm scrolling one day, I see it, and it just sat with me, and I sort of stewed on it. And a couple days later, I had kind of been making some content online, not that much, but I like open my phone and I make a video, and I'm like, I saw this video, somebody talking about like doing a shitty job on purpose, like weaponizing incompetence. And I go on this big rant, and I say, you know, it's not helping your wife. It's not, you're not like a side person. You're not the sidekick at home. This is your collective responsibility. And it had been like domestic equity had been something I had been really working on in my own relationship. About a year and a half prior, I had read Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play. And that was really eye-opening to me. And so I started talking about like the dynamics that we experience, what's normalized for us. And for the next several years, like I guess a couple months after that, I started the hashtag weaponized incompetence. And I started naming it, and I would see the viral videos, the couples comedy, and I would add, instead of hashtag couples comedy, I would do hashtag weaponized incompetence. And this term just like set ablaze. It's taken off, and it's amazing. But one that sticks out to me is, I once saw this video of a woman, and she's showing the inside of her home, and she's got a caption on top. And it's like, she's walking toward the stairs in her large 2-story home, and the entire stairwell is covered with the foam beads from a beanbag. You know what? Recognize that? Have you ever spilled one of those?
Oh, the guts go everywhere. It's like a static electricity nightmare.
It's the worst. Like, it really is that's like a bad dream. It's a nightmare. And so this woman is filming it, and the caption said something like, "This is what I get for going to the doctor in the morning." And so she had clearly booked a doctor's appointment, and then asked her husband or her partner to take care of their toddler in that time. And so not only is there like foam all over the stairs when she comes home, but also there's a baby gate that's open, and the toddler is on the stairs. And I tensed up immediately watching this, because I know I fear for a child's safety on the stairs. I worry about a child that is that small, being alone enough for a long enough time. And toddlers move fast. But to get this beanbag to, I don't know, unzip it, to shred it up and get it everywhere, whatever scenario is going on, she's probably doing the thing that I'm doing, which is like going through all the worst cases, imagining something that doesn't feel safe, feeling that in her body, and possibly feeling some guilt, though making light of it. The guilt, oh, I shouldn't have done this, or I'm so dumb for thinking that I could do this. Whatever it is, I'm putting myself, maybe I'm projecting all of this, but I know I've been in scenarios where I have worried about my kid and then I've blamed myself for them getting hurt or something going wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I called that at the time. I made a video about it. I took her name out of it, blurred out the kid. But I talked about how in that scenario, this goes beyond, har, so silly, the husband shrunk my shirt. Or, haha, even my mother-in-law pretended she didn't know how to follow a nap schedule. Like, there are jokes about it. I don't want to throw husbands under the bus here because it is just a behavior. But I named it. I said, this is how that happens, that someone will stop taking care of themselves. They'll stop seeing their friends. They won't take a job. This erosion of trust goes well beyond just like a lighthearted, goofy, oh, men are so silly. We shouldn't, why would we expect them to be as good as moms? Like this very gendered stereotype that we're sold. It really, like when you really hone in on it, regardless of who's doing it, when one person does a bad job through willful negligence or sabotaging, it's pretty dark. It's very, very damaging and hard to see.
Yes. What would you say is the difference between someone who is like weaponizing incompetence versus kind of like the more maybe scatterbrained or just not dialed in? What would be some of the differences that you would notice between people who are men or women who are perpetuating those behaviors?
Accountability is really at the core of weaponized incompetence. And personally, as somebody, I have ADHD. I've dealt with depression, and those things definitely impact my ability to show up or to meet standards that would generally be reasonable sometimes. What the difference is between weaponized incompetence and sometimes just plain old incompetence or being unable to do something successfully or in a way that meets the needs would be being able to problem solve, being able to take feedback or accept that your actions have consequences and that they impact someone else. No matter how you do at something, no matter your standards, if your behavior impacts somebody else, you have a responsibility to consider them. It comes down to owning your own emotional work in that circumstance, making a good faith effort to problem solve. Sometimes it means thinking about how you are successful in other situations or environments. Like what works at work? If you can't maintain the household schedule, what do you do in other areas of your life? A lot of times there is a punishment piece that comes with weaponized incompetence, which is if you call the person out or name their behavior, Hey, when you don't pay close enough attention to our child and I go out and do something, I come home, I don't trust you as much. I feel really worried and I'm hesitant to go back to the doctor. Ideally, your partner would hear that and your partner would say, wow, I can see where you're coming from. I did get distracted. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but I see how that impacted you and our kid. Let's come up with some protocol. Like, what kind of attention feels good to you? What part was, you discuss it. That's the situation would be like, hey, even if your standards don't align, you have to hear where the other person is coming from, show empathy, and then you can share your different opinion. You just have to hear each other out. It's that good faith part.
Yeah, that immediately makes me think of the nagging paradox that you talk about. So when it comes to something like weaponized incompetence and the person is saying, this is what I see is happening, this is how it impacts me, can we work together to make it different? The nagging paradox comes into play here when either like the thing that's agreed on isn't followed through on, or I'm wondering about, because I do my best to play devil's advocate a bit to say, in what ways is there some truth perhaps to the dynamic and also still address what's actually happening. So could you describe the nagging paradox and how that kind of fits into this weaponized incompetence conversation?
For sure. Yes. So the nag paradox I like to describe as it's the dynamic where one party manages more of the mental load. They do more directing, list making, monitoring, anticipating. That would be more of the domestic engineering role. They're paying attention to everything on the macro and the micro level. And then there's the other party who is taking direction. They're being monitored, sometimes corrected. They are making fewer decisions and taking less initiative. And so that looks like, hey, just make me a list. I'll pitch in, make me a list. Just tell me what to do. Which then quickly turns into, don't tell me what to do. So to go with what you were saying, I agree. It's very important to consider the impact and the role of both parties. Both parties and the relationship are impacted by this dynamic, not equally, but the Gottmans, who are like relationship experts, have studied a whole bunch of things. And one thing that they talk about is the four horsemen, which are behaviors or dynamics that can possibly lead to divorce or breakups. They erode your relationship. And two of the four horsemen are criticism and defensiveness. And what I like to point out here is like, those are perceived. So if you perceive that something is a criticism, it's reasonable to imagine that you would feel defensive. You feel like someone is, and criticism is different than critique. Criticism is like, you are bad. You can't follow through. You are incapable of, and it's like a personal character attack. Whereas a critique or a criticism of a behavior is, hey, this happened that had this impact. And it's talking more about a behavior. And defensiveness can look a lot of different ways. It's a self-protective behavior. Now that becomes an issue when it's downplaying, dismissing, deflecting, pointing blame in the other direction, or stonewalling, silencing, silent treatment, yelling. It could look like a lot of things. So the setup of the nag paradox, one person's making more decisions, managing more of the it would come off as nitpicking, right? And the other party is just like, it can feel like someone's breathing down their neck. Obviously, that's just going to create a huge rift. But it is a snowball effect. So a lot of times, and this was my experience, was my relationship with my husband started with me having a stronger opinion on something because I was raised and perceived as a woman who should learn skills and should behave a certain way. So I developed an opinion on how the house is decorated or what food we might want to eat. My friends were texting me cool recipes. Like, I ended up in this role, and he was happy to support. Like, tell me what bed we're putting together this Saturday. And as time went on, it was, I'll do whatever you want to do. It was, we'll have what you have. And after a while, it was also perceived that we always do what Laura wants to do, which just got worse when we started family planning. And, oh, wow, Laura's actually deciding what type of thing we're doing here. Laura's making the decisions about this. And it just like was cavernous, the gap between us on this. And we had enough arguments where both of us were avoiding these conversations, which would turn into boiling over or totally shutting down and withdrawing. And that's unfortunately, in the years I've spent now, like studying this, working with people, hanging out with academics who have done like deep dives, I'm the norm. I was having a very, very normal common experience. And I blame it on this dynamic of the nag paradox, which is the model of air quote equality, air quote 50-50, you do one thing, I do the other. That really is a setup to fail.
Yeah, one of the terms that you used not that long ago was domestic equity. And for a long time, I didn't really understand the difference between equality and equity. But I talk about this with my husband quite a lot when it comes to dividing up tasks at home, because he's like, it shouldn't be 50-50. You're home most of the time, a stay-at-home mom, essentially. And I'm like, but that's not what I'm asking for, because I can see that it makes sense that I would be in charge of more things in our household because I'm home more, but that doesn't mean it's 0% for you. And that's, to me, the difference between equality and equity. It's like looking at the ball of tasks together and saying, like, not only is it about who's home more, it's also about whose skill level is good for these things, or who is, nobody wants to do it, but who's going to take that on? It's this negotiation and a dynamic of mutual respect and concern for the other person that then leads to a healthy balance that's not equal per se, but it's something that both parties have agreed upon.
Yeah, I like that word, negotiation. Something that I have also learned with working with people for the last several years is a lot of people want to say, like, what's the solution? What's a fair, what's the right balance? And they want to be like, oh, set it and forget it. We'll sit down for 2 hours and like figure out what's going to feel good. And again, like the data across the board says that it has far less to do with how many tasks each partner does, or even how much time they spent on it, or how hard it is. It's very much the relationship quality is very much about how you can negotiate, how you can adjust the conversations you have. And like, even outside of that, something I think about often is you have more access to autonomy if you can drop things and get, like, if there's an emergency and you feel confident that your household will continue to run not the same, but safely in a way that everyone's basic needs are met, if there's an emergency and you can get out the door quickly enough, ideally in this with the same ease that your partner can, that is it brings a sense of security and safety and stability that can feel really good and can really bring that sensation of like fairness and we're in this together.
I think so much about like this idea of set it and forget it. That sounds so nice.
Right.
And it's completely impractical because really the only guarantee that we have is that things will change. And so depending on the season of life that you're in, you know, like you can't really anticipate a health crisis, or you can't anticipate someone having an accident and needing to give them additional support. And so I think particularly that the conversation about the domestic equity lands for a lot of people who are, especially in the season where the children need a lot of attention, like a lot of oversight, a lot of hypervigilance, because their safety literally depends on it, you know. And my children are a bit older now. They're able to like stay home by themselves. And there's like a relief there that did not exist in the earlier stages when it was like eyes on them all the time. Like somebody has to be watching them. And so I think that not that it's eased up. I mean, there's still a lot of there's a lot of a hangover from those days, and a lot of like resentment that I have to like work through and talk about, because it absolutely can compound into these what then show up like the Gottmans talk about with the Four Horsemen. It's like this like residual resentment from all the years where it didn't feel equitable in our house at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I was just having some grief over this in my partnership. And I would say over the last 5 years, my partner and I have really gone from like, I was managing almost everything. I was the one where if something hit our plate, I would either figure it out myself or I would figure out how to figure it out. And that was incredibly heavy. When you are arguing about the topic, it really, emotional work is heavy. It takes up brain matter. Like, and we only have so much to use. We only have so much capacity. So a lot of times, if I was totally tapped out emotionally, it was really easy for me to just do something and keep my mouth shut and not ask for help. I had not an iota of capacity to like measure my tone and ask nicely. It needed to be done now. And if I tell myself to do it, I don't have to do it nicely. We've gone from like that dynamic to much more balanced. I mean, we really have had moments in the last couple of years where I've gotten a call mid kid drop off, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go right now. And my husband is like, go. And I didn't tell him when I was going to be back. I've had to fly out of state. And I knew everything would be fine. I could turn my phone off, and, you know, that's a big deal.
Yeah. But
he works a full-time job with a commute, and we rely on his income and health insurance. I do have paid work and paid responsibilities, but I am also primarily responsible for, if the school calls, I have a more flexible job. We have agreed that is my role. And I was like in tears the other night because we discovered that in Chicago, there are 2 weeks before in August where every campus closed. I swear, in the city of Chicago, the Park District, the Y, the Boys and Girls Club, the school-sponsored camp, the 2 private ones that are within 20 minutes of our home, the only available camps that are not like karate or soccer, which my kids will not go to, are $700 per kid per week.
Jeez.
And we just cannot do that. It doesn't make sense for us. And so I'm sad. I'm really sad thinking it doesn't matter. Like, it just feels like we hit a wall there, and I'm going to take the time off. The conundrum here is I wish that he could take that time off with us, and he does too. And I realize that he has access to certain stability and security by continuing to have this job that I do not have. I do have a precarious job situation. So there is this give and take where he feels really sad about part of it. We feel really sad about part of it. And we're just up against so much, even when we really do that work and repair a lot of that resentment. Ultimately, we end up, I guess it's more healthy. I resent our circumstances.
Yeah. To me, that sounds like, well, first of all, because we don't live in the same types of communities that we used to live in, just as a human species. So the old adage about like it takes a village to raise a child, and people are like, where the hell is my village? That's like a real thing. Being on the same team, looking at the problem together, shoulder to shoulder, and be like, hey, we're teammates here. Like, how are we going to solve this? Instead of like looking at the other person as the problem. I mean, sometimes they are, but it's a much healthier model to be like, this isn't about you or me necessarily. This is about a dynamic that is essential to our family. This is how the household has to run. Like, can we just side by side look at this together and be like, what can I individually do to solve this, and how can we work as a team to do this together?
Yeah, and that was, I think, one of the biggest shifts. I was saying about how we got into this cycle where it was like I was the decider because I was burdened with the decision making, which also came off like I'm deciding everything. Like, I'm the boss of the house. And that felt bad because I think I was having the experience that many primary caregivers have, which is I was totally ignoring my own needs. And so I was making a million choices for considering everybody else except me. And so at the perception, at the accusation of, or even the suggestion that I was doing something that I wanted to do, I was like enraged. And because we're taught we have different outlooks on life. Everybody does. I think that this nag paradox setup often makes women or decision makers like into this villain who we're ungrateful. We're like or like that your time is in competition to my time. My needs are in competition with yours. And ideally, wouldn't we just be looking at the collective? Like, what's good for all of us with everyone's needs considered, with more balance and trying to come to the best conclusion for everyone? Because it's not like suddenly mom wins and mom gets her way and gets all the freedom. That's not the goal. It's like, what's truly the collectively, what's the best option for all of us? And it would be nice for everyone to be making conscientious, considerate decisions, thinking about that.
One of the things that you said in one of your Substack posts was, I was terrified to tell people what I really needed, and I wonder how much of that, I'm in a psychology class right now, and for personality, and we're talking, we got into this really big class discussion where some people were saying like, I'm just like blunt and honest with people, like they, I don't hold anything back and they know what I'm feeling, and like talking about how confusing it is when people are not like that and framing it as this like selfish thing, like, it's like it's completely selfish that you wouldn't just be honest about what you need. And then there's other people who are like, that is so not true. Like, it's because it was not safe for me to say how I really felt about things. And so it got me to thinking about like how much of this inequality or inequity in these relationships. I wonder how much of that piece plays into this. Like, how much are these things unresolved because either in, childhood or prior relationships, or even that relationship, it just wasn't safe to say how you really felt. And you brought that up a little bit when you talked about the punishment piece being an important, like, component to the weaponized incompetence. But maybe we could kind of talk about that a little bit, about what to do when you feel scared to say what you really need and what you really want.
That's very interesting. I share about this in my book, some of the internal thoughts and things that really clicked for me. And a big moment in my own personal journey of going from this like very imbalanced, ignoring my own needs or hiding them, I guess, trying to figure it out on my own, to being very honest about them, was making the decision basically like, I'm guaranteeing I'm not going to have my needs met right now.
Oh.
I'm like,
right.
I'm for sure not going to be okay. And I had to ask myself, what am I afraid of? And sometimes you're afraid for a good reason. Like, I know that a lot of that internal feeling is because I have been, when I've talked about my needs or asked for something, they've been denied. Or I had, if I had someone I relied on ice me out, or or punish me because of a way that I acted, or something I needed. Yeah, I learned a lesson about that. And so I am incredibly sensitive to a perceived rejection. So I can think about where that comes from. But yeah, the shift for me happened when I was like, okay, I'm guaranteeing I'm not having my needs met now if I don't verbalize them. But accepting that, like, playing out the worst case scenario. Okay, the worst case scenario is instead of having small, frustrating arguments about this, I could just be like, hey, actually, this needs to change, or I can't be in this relationship anymore. Like, the answer could be no. Like, I could have a scenario where my partner, the person who I would really like to say yes to me, they could say no, or their behavior could indicate that they are unwilling or incapable of showing up for me the way that I very explicitly asked them to. And if I played that scenario out, it took me really months before having like a serious conversation, where I thought, like, what would I do? What do I feel like I would have access to if I got what I wanted? How else could my life look? What if I was single? Would I spend more time with my friends? Would I go back to school? What would I do? And I thought through a million scenarios, and I realized that there are other ways to live. Like, I could have really close friends that I eat dinner with every night. I could travel. I could have freaking split custody. There are so many ways that I could be safe, or different ways that my relationship could look. And that was the thing, realizing, like, I feel like this is a safety issue. I feel like my life's going to fall apart, and oh my gosh, it's going to be so terrible I could die. Really what that is frustration or grief, or it isn't necessarily unsafety. It is a perception I had. So, I mean, it took a bunch of even now I'm like spiraling around a lot of thoughts and feelings, but it was the moment of this could be different. This sucks. The way it is sucks. I really like my partner. I think he's cool. I would like him to like me back and choose me. However, this is a miserable relationship as it is, and I do not want it. So, am I just going to continue this pattern, or am I going to say that out loud? And everyone's going to have a different answer to that.
Yeah. Oh, I laughed because it was like immediately clicked for me that if if you don't say anything, like you're guaranteed that things will continue to be how they are. Like there's and so yeah, asking that question of like what exactly am I risking by saying the truth? And that's, I think it's often feels safer to not even imagine the worst case scenario, or to allow prior instances of saying your needs and having, like you said, getting iced out or being punished, or having someone say, yes, I'll do that, and then not following through. Like it feels, and this is one of the things that we talked about in the class, was like, it feels not easier, but more manageable for me just to manage my own disappointment, my own angst, my own even like existential feelings about how my life looks, than it is to be perceived as selfish, or to be perceived as not working hard enough on the relationship or whatever. And like I could almost like feel myself negotiating wants versus needs. And I think that's a really, really sticky place for people who are used to handling it all, even at the expense of like their own physical and mental health. It's like, if I can keep doing this because I've proven to myself that I can do it. So like, at what point are we saying, yeah, I can do it, but that doesn't mean I have to.
Right. Yeah. And this is where I soapbox, because I think about the way that frustrated mothers specifically are portrayed. And I mean, I'm thinking about everything from Claire from Modern Family to the wife from King of Queens, to like it's this shrill, overreacting, like constantly stressed out, type A, nitpicking. But there's like a laugh track over it, or there's there's just a million like joking names, the ball and chain, the old warden, all these terms for women who, the ball busters. You come home from work and you just love to suck the joy out of the weekend. Like, oh, mom's mad, better get up, or she's going to tell us to clean up our rooms. There's this way that women are painted that is very cruel and really downplays the reality of, yeah, it actually is very stressful. And again, data shows women are held to a different standard and are seen as less moral for not doing more work in their household as parents or in their relationships. It's not a made up thing. So yeah, that really bothers me when women are framed this way. Just really, and because of what it does to us on the inside and how we how it drives our behavior. Yeah,
I pulled a quote from one of your other Substack articles where you said, eventually I made a commitment to realign my life with what I needed and wanted. I felt like I had no choice. It was either claw my way out or get buried alive. And I think about this, these women who are portrayed a particular way in these sitcoms, they probably don't like it either. You know, like for women who feel like that in their relationships are like, I used to be more fun. I used to be much more laid back. And this is what has happened to me over time when I've been relegated to the position of taking care of everybody else except for myself. I don't like who I became. So can you talk a little bit about that shift for yourself and the commitment to realign your life with what you needed and wanted?
Yeah. Actually, I was talking with Libby Ward, who wrote, she just came out with a book, Honest Motherhood.
Everyone should follow her on Instagram if they're not.
Yes.
Really lovely. Mm-hmm.
And so I had the honor of doing her book launch with her. And she said it wasn't shifting how she did things as a mom away from like this martyrdom toward a different kind of life where her needs were honored more. A lot of times people will say like, oh, I found myself again. Or there was like, I had lost myself and I found myself again. I really liked what she said in this talk, which was that she found herself for the first time. Like she really discovered herself in that moment. And I like that framing because becoming a mom is one very transformative thing. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly transformative. And it's one of those things like you don't take back. There's no like return to something before you. It is fully transformational. And I believe, at least my experience was like, that didn't go away. I am a whole, more rounded out person. And I do have social circles where, you know, people may find out that I have kids like weeks into us knowing each other because the context just doesn't come up. And whereas early motherhood, early parenthood, that was very central to who I was, how I shaped my time. And there are parts of me that are just like fourth grade Laura and parts of me that are like high school Laura, 25-year-old Laura. And then, you know, there's parts of me that are very much mom. But it's a constant negotiation for me of being, playing a different role in different people's lives, of learning who I am when I am in solitude, who I am at the moment. And, you know, I am different things on different days and to different people. And that's kind of like the magic of being alive. But what remains important is not settling, not just defaulting to the scripts that have been given to us, not just about who we should be, but also like where our priorities should be. And yeah, I had a moment, and I tell that story like in my Substack that you're talking about, where I was like, I'm not going to be just a mom and a wife anymore. I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon. And it was like, this is going to be my big redemption story. It's going to be awesome. And so much of it was like, it was really such an incredible experience. And also what was very true was that what empowered me to be there was my shifts in my relationship, my mom helping out. You know, we had friends who helped out with us, neighbors. And I mean, I just even had friends who were like, please text me pictures. Mm-hmm. That was encouraging. So it wasn't just like this internal thing that happened to me. It was like a joint effort and realizing that I can't be everything to everyone. I can't do everything on my own. This is like a much bigger shift and alignment that needed to happen.
I love that. Like the trip being the fruit of all the labor that took to be able to take a trip like that.
Yes.
All the little conversations here and there, the groundwork that was laid in order to be able to shift things in a big way. That's I think back to this question about how do we, when we're used to not saying how we really feel, the shift into saying how we really feel often feels like this huge thing, like we can't really wrap our arms around. But I've found that in the quest towards more confidently becoming myself, it's more about these like little moments where before I negotiated my way out of what I knew I really wanted or what I really needed. And, it's like all the yeses I said when when everything in me was saying no, those were somehow like more important in laying the groundwork of changing my life in a dramatic way. It's like those 1-degree turns. And, we know this from the psychology of behavior change, that it's not about the like, I'm gonna start out by going to the gym every single day of the week for 1 hour. Like, that's not how it works. Actually, behavior change happens when the only thing you do is put your shoes by the front door and you take a 1-minute walk. Like those are like those micro moments. And when I think about things from like a brain perspective, those pathways are like forged through repetition, and they're strengthened through things that are emotionally salient. And so yes, like it's not really going to work to have like the one big conversation with the person that's like, yes, okay, we fixed it now, because there's too much happening here that wants to go back to the way things have always been. So I think we have to view these conversations of like, how do I make things more equitable? How do I keep things running in a healthy way long term by these calling things out in the moment and these micro shifts all the time and these like little adjustments, instead of like, oh crap, like I got to take my car in for like this major realignment now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to that, like, I wish we could set it and forget it. Like, I love, there are systems out there. Like I said, like, I think that Fair Play is very helpful in visualizing invisible labor. And I think it's like a system. Eve Rodsky wrote this book, but it's also a system for negotiating and dividing domestic labor. But you can't just like divide the cards one time. You can't just like, you take 50, I take 50 one time. And it's not like solving these problems isn't a one-time conversation, like you said. It is logistical. Who's got the time? Who's using their time this way? Who's actually making decisions? And it is that piece of like, I mean, I think about, we'll have a small conflict over like books that have been left on the stairs. And even though, we have both explicitly talked about it's anybody's responsibility to take stuff upstairs, I'll tell you, I don't do it. And sometimes I will, it used to be me being frustrated that no one else was doing it. And now I walk past it and I'll catch myself being like, oh, I just hope someone else would do it. I didn't think twice about it, but I was really hoping someone else would do it because I don't want to. And if my husband brings it up to me, I have to own that I did that. Like, despite the fact that I could easily go to, do you know how many times you've done that to me? And I would want to. Years after we have initiated these conversations, there's still, like you said, like this, sometimes like a sense of betrayal. Like there are these real resentments that linger in there that take a long time and a big commitment to undo and to adjust. But I can confidently tell you that it gets better and is a thing that can drastically change. Sometimes it is cut and run. Sometimes it is like, it's better to burn this house down. And sometimes it's better to burn this down and then intentionally build something else. No matter what it looks like.
Yeah, I love Esther Perel talks about how most people have 3 or 4 marriages in their life, and sometimes it's with the same person. And
I love that.
I love that too, because it really is like, once you get to the point of no return because you've seen something or acknowledged something in yourself, that then you're like, I can't not look at this anymore.
Yep.
Like there's no way that I can ignore what's either sprung to life inside myself or I recognize is dead. It cannot continue the way that it has. And I wonder how many people kind of hit that spot and then kind of hobble along with that internal knowledge for a long time before they say something. But I don't know. I guess that's one of the, things that's pretty consistent with habit change and behavior change too, is like we keep doing the same things that we do until it's too painful to keep doing it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's data on that, like how long people, tolerate something very painful. But I agree with you. I think that people backslide into like old behaviors or find comfort in old things. But when you like recognize how unsustainable something is, I feel like a lot of people have a rock bottom, whether it's with their career or a parental relationship or a friendship. Like no matter what it is, there's sometimes like a rock bottom, and that is the transformational moment where even if there's behavior that repeats itself or dynamics that continue, it's this like I can't unsee it. I can't unsee it, and now I'm either accepting it or on my way toward, I don't know, changing it.
Mm-hmm. So the golden question is, how do we get other people to change? That's what we really want to know, right?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, I remember somebody saying, if change is so easy, you do it. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you point out how difficult it is for me to change myself?
No. That's something I hear a lot is like, even when I share my personal story, like, how did you talk to your partner about it without him getting defensive? It's like, you can't.
Yeah.
There are ways that you can, take responsibility for your own communication. Like I said, like if I'm going to talk to somebody about behavior or a dynamic, I don't have to be like, you're a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. I could be like, this is a really painful dynamic and I want to solve it because I love you and would like to have a long-term sustainable relationship with you. There's a qualitative difference between those two things. But also it is up to my partner in that circumstance. If he perceives either of those things as an attack, if he wants to continue to talk to me about it, the ball's in his court now. He has to communicate how he's receiving it. He has to take responsibility for how he comes back at me. It's a, takes two people to tango, all that.
Yeah.
I don't have a choice ultimately over how I don't have a choice over how he reacts.
I think that's maybe one of the most important things that is part of this conversation is like, how do I tolerate the discomfort in my own self when the other person doesn't like what I have to say, or that I don't have to be the one to, I'm managing all these other things, I'm doing this emotional labor. Some of that is like, you have to cut yourself off from doing the emotional labor for the other person when it's not your job.
Yeah. Have you ever read Emotional Labor by Rose Hackman?
No, but I'm writing it down.
Hoo boy. It's an incredible book. So incredible. And I got my hands on it during a moment where I was going through something within my family of origin. And the way that she describes emotional labor, it's a term that like among researchers is a little bit of a hot topic, because a lot of people will call like house management emotional labor, which it doesn't fit. Like domestic labor and emotional labor together would be a good way to describe like the mental load. It's like emotional thinking, which is something actually Leah Ruppiner, she just wrote Drained, another good recommendation. She's been researching like what all of those terms actually are and helping define them. But in emotional labor, Rose defines emotional labor as like the self-editing work that you do on yourself in order to maintain or create like an emotional response from someone else, regardless of how you are feeling. And ideally, you know, emotional labor is not a bad thing. But ideally both parties would be doing it. And it's not always balanced. And, you know, as a parent or as a caregiver to anyone, that impacts whose role it is and responsibility. But yeah, if you're the one who's disproportionately managing the mental energy in a room, that's going to cause a problem. That causes a power dynamic.
Yeah. This, not to keep like banging on about this class that I'm taking, but so much of this is intersecting this book that's our required reading is called, it's like Me, Myself, and Us or something like that.
Oh.
And, it's really funny and really good. And the chapter that we're currently reading on is, about low interiority or high interiority. So it's like, how attuned are you to what's happening internally, and how flexible are you in your social situations to kind of like adapt to whatever's happening. And people that have low interiority tend to just be the same, like across the board. It's like regardless of what anybody is feeling or whatever. And so, and often they have like they put more stock in risky behaviors, like they are less likely to wear their seatbelt, for example. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and I kind of wonder if, you know, for people who are either by, I think like the intersection of choice, chance, and then also the way that we're conditioned, choice, chance, and conditioned to be the people who take on the lion's share of the responsibilities domestically. So if someone also is just naturally personality wise wired to have that like more attentiveness to their interior state, like to be with someone who doesn't have that sounds like it's just gonna like make that imbalance even more.
That's fascinating.
I'll look up the title of the book. I'm annoyed that I can't remember what it's called now.
I mean, that's the thing is, in a lot of relationships where there's an imbalance, like you said, an imbalance of emotional labor, one party is expecting the others to maintain their emotional environment. And like, this is something actually, again, in my book, I explore, and it's something that I learned from, it's the pillars of white supremacy culture, or the characteristics of white supremacy culture, which is basically the right to comfort. And a lot of times, you know, there's a demographic or whoever's in power is their comfort is prioritized and maintained. And that sounds very aligned with what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think about this dynamic a lot of like like the person who's doing more of the mental and emotional and even physical labor in the domestic space, like why would the person who's not doing that, why would they want it to change? Like there really isn't any impetus outside of the person who is carrying all of it saying, this doesn't work for me anymore. And that has to be enough for that other person to have that internal motivation or drive to change. Like that has to be enough, because everything else is working in their favor. Like that sounds like a sweet setup, you know, like there's this, I haven't watched it recently, but couples therapy, which is like such a fascinating like goldfish bowl to put your face up against. But I remember I can't stop thinking about this one man who said something along the lines of like, I just want you to anticipate my needs. Like, you already know that I want this cup of water and I just want it to be there and I just don't want to have to ask for it. And I'm thinking like, of course you want that, because like that sounds awesome to have someone who just like knows what you want and anticipates your need and is always available. And I was like, but that's not a relationship, and it also isn't taking into account how that other person feels about being in that position. So I'm like, that makes sense to me though, like, and what a refreshing thing for him to be so disgustingly honest about what he wants his marriage to look like. But like I think that's what a lot of people are operating in their relationship from, is this like really kind of infantile, like, take care of me feeling.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And that's like, in all of my years and research in this now, I guess anecdotally, not quite, I see a lot of light bulb moments when the perception of safety is lost. Whether that's like, consider your privilege and identity. And then when that, you know, it is just ultimately a perception of safety. It's not real safety. Because the only real safety is relational, and when you have lots of strong relationships. But it's like, a lot of times for someone who's good looking, who has this like beautiful, they get the benefit of this halo effect of everyone thinks that, oh, they're so handsome. They lose their looks and suddenly they go, oh shit, now people don't treat me the same. Or they have a high powered job, they lose it. They go, oh my God, everything I banked on, I've lost. And when it's so interesting you're saying this, when somebody has an outside thing impact them and threaten them, when they've had this false sense, I see this light bulb go off and go, oh, wow, my worldview was totally not correct. And I think, like, as a white woman, and a mom, I think that COVID and the loss of my perception of safety really like lit a fire under my ass, where I was like, oh, nobody cares about me. I have done this, and this. I have all of these things set up for me, and none of it ultimately matters, because this is all just, it's all just made up. And what really matters is like, wow, the relationships, the quality of life, how I feed into other people. Like, it really like shifted how I saw the world. And I think that has to be something big.
Yes. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a lot of people experience that with COVID, because, you know, it does feel on the other side of this now that people are still pretty wobbly because there was like this, not only did it disrupt the work dynamic, but the household dynamic, school, people came face to face with their own mortality in a way that a lot of times like is kind of just pushed to the periphery. And, you know, in my own life, it was my daughter's rare diagnosis that completely was like, oh, everything that I thought I knew about how the world was and how it was going to be and my place in it is like, oh, just kidding. Like, it's not that. I can't remember what philosopher it was that talked about how everybody, hopefully, at some point has, either through choice or by chance, has their basket of apples that's like knocked over. And he talks about how, you know, in the basket somewhere there is a rotten apple, and you can't stick your hand in there and find it, otherwise you'll spread the rot. So you have to dump the whole basket out, and then you have to pick up the apples one by one and examine it fully and be like, do I want to put this back in my basket? And that's what I feel like COVID did, that's what I feel like, for people who you were talking about, like losing their looks or losing their high-powered job, losing their sense of security or safety or who they thought they knew they were, their identity, that basket gets kicked over. And it's a real opportunity to be like, do I want to put this way that I was doing things like back in this box or this basket? Do I want to? There's a lot of choice there that I think is really important. With proper support, we're able to like ask those questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's an interesting thought experiment when you think about like how our culture rushes us to get back, or like wants to pressure us, like pick up the pieces, got to keep going. And things have gone back to normal in a lot of ways, and the opportunity to really change things, so it can feel like a lot of opportunities were missed.
Yeah. We're coming close to time, but I don't want to end our conversation before you get to talk to us about your book.
Sure. Oh, sure. So my book, No More Mediocre, in it, I share my own personal story and anecdotes from my own experience. But ultimately, it's a book about what has gotten us to this place of sometimes complacency, but accepting the kind of mediocre, less than we deserve, normal in work, in our relationships, in our systems, in our close, intimate partnerships or relationships, and how we can have better. It's absolutely not doom and gloom. There are actionable things you can do. Every chapter full of actual interviews and examples of what it can look like to have quality. And I like to say it's hopeful, like relentlessly hopeful. Yeah.
I'll confess to you that I was feeling a little bit apprehensive about our conversation because I'm already so mad.
Oh, sure.
About like how so many things are going. And I was like, I need to prepare myself. Like this might just like, and maybe rightfully so, like stoke the fire. But that is one of the things I wanted to ask you is like, what, you are so immersed in this work. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you, like, what makes you feel hopeful? You kind of already talked about like how you address that in the book, but would you mind sharing with me, like, what in the shitstorm of 2026 and everything that comes with that, everything that came before that led us up to this point, what's making you feel hopeful right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, my story, I open it in the intro basically in 2019 and 2020, where things were rough. My relationship was imbalanced. My job, I was just, it was too much for me. And I knew something needed to change, but it wasn't changing. Like, I was just sort of thinking about it. And the pandemic and the impact that had on us really changed things. It took me to this boiling point, this climax of like, no, this can't work. But at the same time, in my community, when everything shut down, my neighborhood, like everybody came together. It was incredible. I mean, joint grocery store trips, checking on our neighbors to make sure they had their medication. Through the winter, taking turns shoveling. I mean, it's always been a very cool neighborhood. I love it. But it was like all of the connections that had been established were so much more intense and strong. And a lot of times when there is a crisis moment, people show up. And oftentimes, I mean, it's the person you don't even know that well, maybe that you see walking down the street or in a community space, but don't know that well. That person, you live in the same space as them. You are ultimately invested in them thriving. And so that was really important for me to see and experience, and more equity at home allowed me and empowered me to have more time investing in my community, which of course like led to the trip to the to the Grand Canyon. But even through the intensity of writing this book, which I did get very isolated through the process, I turned in my final copy and like that week went to our community block party. And it was like those same faces are like, hey, haven't seen you in a while. What's new? And as the chaos of 2026 has happened, there have been very intense moments, especially if you've been watching the news of Chicago. Like, people have had to show up and put themselves on the line for each other. And it's just beautiful to see in the context of like, you don't always see the threads coming together. You don't always see the actual safety that exists there. But if we look around, like really there are people around you who want you to do well. And it takes a little bit of vulnerability. Sometimes getting past the dread of like, oh my God, I have to get outside the house. But it's so worth it. And so, I mean, anytime I walk out the front door and I can like say hi to a neighbor, it absolutely fills me with like, it's not even just like joy. It's like, wow, this overwhelming sense of that the systems are bullshit. It's all made up. What matters is these relationships that we build. And I see it and I know it. And again, I'm like relentlessly hopeful that we'll be okay. We'll be okay. The birds will continue to fly.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that COVID, I feel like taught us as humans is like how inconsequential we are. Like if we're not here, like everything continues. And so like what are we doing with the time that we do have? How are we caretaking not just our planet, but how are we caretaking? Why can't I say that word? Caretaking each other as well, and not at the expense of ourselves, but in a way that it's like mutually beneficial. There's like so much reciprocity in there when it's like we see each other and like, oh hey, you're just another human like bumbling along through this, and like the willingness to open negotiations for how that relationship could look. It's a really beautiful thing.
It is.
That is so hopeful.
Yeah.
Any parting words? Of course, I will put links for everything for your book and the books that we talked about into the episode notes. But any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I know whoever's going to listen to this is going to listen to it anytime. It could be any time in space and time that you are listening to this. But my favorite thing in the world is my local gardening club. And my advice is that if there is a local gardening group, go to it. You don't have to know anything about anything. Gardening people are the best. They want you to ask them about their flowers or their plants. And it's like the most welcoming, wonderful space to be in. And you meet people of all ages in your community. 10 out of 10. If you're looking for that relentless hope, like go to your gardening group.
I love that so much. Thank you for your time today. And for all of our listeners, before we go, P.S. We expire.